like, do you want to do this every day? If you're fucking like depressed or you're drinking every day because you can't deal with the stress, like, you don't have to be a rapper. You know what I'm saying? Like, I try to have that conversation with myself about like, can you do this every day? And is this worth it? Pretty regularly.
Games got way too complex for me, man. The last game I was good at was like Street Fighter 2.
What's going down? It's the Music Entrepreneur Club. My name is DJ Payne One. He's Dame Ritter. We actually do have a special guest today. Stevie Ray will allow him to introduce himself in a second. But I'm excited about today's episode because we're basing it on an article that was published in a online publication that I actually don't dislike. So shout out to DJ Booth. They've actually inspired a lot of our episodes. And Dame, do you want to introduce this topic because you're the one who brought this article up?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a topic that, you know, a lot of or most artists can relate to, and it's something that I have a lot of questions for him because, like, I've personally dealt with a lot of artists over the past 10 years, and I'm not going to be playing devil's advocate, but I do have a lot of questions, you know, in response to some of the things he wrote. But Stevie Ray, thank you for being here. Please, before we jump into the discussion, just let people know like who you are, where you're from, give people the background info.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. My name's Stevie Ray. I'm an MC from San Francisco, California, and currently living in LA now. But yeah, just been, you know, about a decade now of doing this whole DIY rap shit and loading up fucking cars and driving around the country and playing shows and putting songs out and, you know, living that whole life. But here I am now, you know, it's good to be here, and it's been a hell of a ride.
So I had no idea you were from the Bay, and I didn't know you. So I'm in LA right now. I'm from LA. I'm in LA right now.
Okay, good.
But the Bay is like my second home. I probably spent about 8 years of my life in the Bay.
Okay, you were living up there?
Yeah, well, I went to school at Berkeley.
Okay, word.
And then I
lived on like Ashby and Telegraph for like 6 months.
Yeah, I love the East Bay, man. And then I actually went back to school, got my master's at Stanford. So I was there for like, you know, like it's like a total of 8 years. But anyway, enough about me.
I was born and grew up in Redwood City, so just like down the street from Palo Alto, from Stanford.
Dope. Well, dope, man. So you say you've been doing this for about 10 years? Yeah,
I mean, like maybe I think like professionally or, you know, with professional aspirations for like the last 5. It used to be just like, you know, when we were like in high school and shit, like rapping at parties and stuff like that. But then I don't know. Yeah, maybe like 3 or 4 years in, started getting some shows around the city, and I never really took it that serious. And then we started playing shows and kind of realized like, I just kind of realized like I'm like doper than a lot of these people. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I'm kind of good. I guess I should try a little harder. And that was kind of probably like 23, I think, when I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to try and do this.
So, and then how old are you now? If that's not something you reveal publicly, don't feel, you know.
Oh, no, I don't really care. I'm 28 years old.
Okay. Still super young. For sure.
Done.
All right. So are you a full-time artist now, or do you do stuff on the side?
I'm pretty much full-time now. Every now and then, like, I did like bartending and like table service stuff for a long time as like a side hustle. So It's like someone has like a wedding gig or something and it's fast money and I need it. I still have ways to earn side money, but I'm able to earn a mostly livable income off of my music, at least for the time being.
Dope. So how did you get connected with DJ Booth to write this article?
You know, it was a pretty like long. It kind of just happened, like, so when they were doing the whitelist program for Audio Mac, actually before that even, my buddy used to write for DJ Booth like a few years back. He did a couple articles for them, and so he had a relationship with Z, and Z was asking for like music recommendations, and I texted him and I was like, yo, tweet my album at Z because I want him to see it, and I know he'll see it if you tweet it at him. And then maybe like 3 months after that, Z DM'd me on Twitter and was like, hey, we're doing the whitelist program for Audio Mac. We want to set you up to get paid through Audio Mac. I noticed your album isn't up there. Can you put your album up there? And so that's kind of when I first had contact with Z. And then after that, I would I'd ping him whenever I drop stuff on Audio Mac, just to kind of foster the relationship and stay in touch. And then last week I was writing the piece, because I write in my journal a lot. So I was just writing about this concept just like for personal reasons. And it started to develop. Like it was like 1 page, 2 page. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, this is kind of a real thing. And that's when I sent Z a message and was like, yo, I've been writing this thing. I don't know if you guys want to consider it for a guest editorial. And the whole thing happened pretty fast. Like I was just kind of sketching in my notebook, and then I sent Z a message, and like 48 hours later it was up.
Dope. Yeah, Z's a solid cat, man. Definitely.
Yeah, he's always treated me really well.
Dope. So can you explain kind of what the article was about?
Yeah, I mean, quite like the genesis of it, like when I was writing in my journal, was really just kind of documenting the current. I'm in the process of promoting a record right now. I just put out a song called Nothing But Love, and I was just in the midst of doing all of the like press correspondence, and like there's just so much. You have to be like available to promote yourself online on any given platform at any given moment for the first like 2 weeks, really, that you have a record out. Especially like I don't have anybody doing any of my marketing or social media work. So, and it's just stressful, man. Like my normal days are peaceful. Like I write raps and I fucking do push-ups and read books and study and just like live my life and do what I love to do. And then all of a sudden, you know, you got a record coming out and you're excited. Like those are the moments you look forward to, but it's not that fun or like that happy, you know, like it's a lot of stressful work. And it's weird, man, like being on social media and being judged and having to like, it takes a lot of confidence to like say, look at me over and over again, and ignore every comment that you don't want to read, you know, all the shit that people have to say. And so I was just going through that whole mess of trying to stay sane and also stick to your guns. I've seen a lot of my artist friends, like the stress of that whole process, like just kind of causes them to abandon ship. Like I'm always like, hey, it doesn't matter. You got to stay on Instagram. You got to keep replying to comments. You got to stay in here and work your record for these like at least 2 weeks. And so I was just going through that whole thing, and I started writing about it. And that's kind of the concept of the article. Sorry, is just how to keep your head and how to be able to do your job without letting it chew you up and spit you out.
Right. So for you, like knowing that when you're about to release music, it's a stressful time. Like, how do you prepare for that? Because you've probably gone through this cycle quite a few times, you know, given that you're, you know, a damn near a decade in. How do you prepare yourself for this cycle?
You know, I think the biggest thing for me is I try to just imagine. I will sit, like, have like kind of a meditation period where I'll imagine it going horribly bad, like getting no plays and no traction and no one picks it up. And then also imagine it going super, super well, and just kind of like feel the emotions that come with imagining either scenario. Because honestly, both of them can kind of scare you. You know what I mean? Like the idea of it blowing up and your life being like different tomorrow is like, as much as you like want it your whole life, it's still scary to be like, holy shit, everything I know could be different in a week or 2 weeks from now. So for me, it's just kind of like simulating it in my head and getting to a place where I can like accept either reality. And if I feel like I'm cool with either option, then I feel comfortable moving forward. It's like when you're like, it has to go really well or I'm going to be devastated. I don't like being in that position, because like sometimes records flop, man, or like the record I dropped before this one, it was scheduled for like 6 weeks. It came out on Friday the 13th, like the day they announced the national emergency and told everyone to go inside. And every publication is like coronavirus updates, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like me tweeting like, yo, check out my song was like so invaluable in that time. And the song tanked, and you just got to let that go, you know?
Right. Well, you could, I mean, you know, knowing that it didn't receive the coverage that it did, I mean, because I think the cool thing about the way music is today is like we always have an opportunity to breathe life into a record.
Totally.
Or re-release a record or release it with a remix, or, you know, there's always if you believe in that song and you think it's dope, you know, there's a way to give it attention, you know, because of streaming and just all the tools that we have now. Payne, I mean, feel free to jump in. I don't want to just, but like,
Yeah,
I got tons of questions, but I don't want
I have
to.
a big topic.
What's up, man?
It's probably a can of worms, but it struck me yesterday during the summit, and it struck me just now when you introed yourself, Stevie Ray, because you used the term DIY to describe yourself, and oftentimes I think misuse the term indie or independent to just kind of mean this umbrella term of every artist out there who isn't signed to a major label, which is a hell of a spectrum. I mean, it's people who just started rapping yesterday. They fall under that umbrella. People who are signed to Empire, who have Grammys and platinum records, but they're technically independent. They fall under that umbrella. I almost feel like, especially in the hip hop world, we just avoid that term DIY. Do you think that's a more important distinction that we should be making? Because I think independent artists and DIY artists have very different needs oftentimes and lead different lives and have different processes.
Totally. Yeah, like I have friends who are independent, but they have a manager and they get like cash advances from their distributors and all this stuff where like they have support that I don't have, and so I use the term DIY because I think it makes a clear distinction as far as what I'm trying to say, especially with this article of like if you see something posted or if, you know what I mean, like everything that happens, I did it. And not to say that like I still have a team as far as like I have, you know what I mean? Like I have my producer and like who's like kind of like my A&R that helps me like write all my songs and get my sound where it is. Mix engineers and people that I can count on for strategy or book recommendations, but I don't have anyone who's going to pick up the work and get it. You know what I mean? If something has to come off the checklist, for the most part, I'm doing it myself, But yeah, it is like the term indie is, like you said, like a really wide spectrum. That could be a kid who just put his first song on SoundCloud, or like you said, somebody with a Grammy. But yeah, I think that's like why I've used the term DIY, is just to kind of like drive home the point that like, because there's a difference between the point in your career where you have to do everything yourself and when you can start to build a team,
Yeah, and I feel like we should embrace that. I mean, for me as a producer, there's a huge difference between me working on a DIY project and me working on an indie project.
Yeah.
And I make that distinction because with an indie project, I'm dealing with the label. I'm probably getting an advance from them, though it would be a smaller advance than what's offered by a major. But it's still a lot easier. I still focus on the music with the artist and the business with the business people. Whereas when it's DIY, like my project with Soul, or kind of halfway in the middle of all that, when I'm working with Ted Park, I'll go more with Soul because we're literally driving ourselves to tour dates. We're designing all of the graphics ourselves. We're scheduling everything in and, on the phone strategizing. There's no one telling us what to do. There's no one imposing deadlines onto us. We're doing that all ourselves. It's just a very different experience. And I almost think when we talk about independent hip hop, we're almost, and I don't know how you feel about this, Dame, because you actually ran an independent label. And when I hear from your experience, you did a lot. You were very hands-on. So I know that there's a distinction between the two, but it's almost as though we're glorifying independent labels over everything else. And realistically, we can't just jump out of our home studios into that situation all the time. A lot of us have to go through the DIY process. And I personally think a lot of us should go through the DIY process because suddenly we understand what it takes. We understand how difficult it is. So we when we find ourselves in a situation where we're working with other people, we can appreciate and respect what they're doing because we'd had to do it ourselves and that fell on us. And then on top of it, we're more strategic because we had to shoulder that entire burden ourselves. So when it comes down to it, we know what we need to do. We know the process.
For sure. Now, I think, there's a wide range of all types of artists that fall under these different umbrellas. Like even at a major label, you're going to have the major label artist that gets, all the support, all the resources they need at their disposal, and then you have the person that's kind of shelved, and then everybody in between. I mean, I've seen, quote unquote DIY artists more efficient and effective with their surrounding team than, artists that are on majors or successful independent record labels. So it's just different across the board. But I think it is, I think it is an important distinction to make, because it can be vastly different. If I can though, just kind of pivot back to like your release process. Do you feel like that pressure that you're talking about, like all of that cycle that you're going into, do you feel like that's pressure you're putting on yourself, or that's pressure that's coming from the outside?
I'd say it's pressure that I put on myself. Like every artist is different, and for me, like the business side of it, like I have no problem like spending, like, reading books about marketing strategies or staying up on social media best practices. So like I understand that that's a way that I can advance my career. And as much as I don't really like doing it, I think it's important. So I task myself with the responsibility of doing it and doing it well. So it's like I know what it takes to successfully like roll out a record and produce enough content and enough momentum and to get enough like external coverage to create a narrative of a song going somewhere, as opposed to just like, look at me, here's my song, I put it on Spotify and a week later it's over. So I think it's really for me about like wanting to elevate my career and get some of my music to take off to a place where it can kind of change things for me. And I was able to do that once, like remotely, as far as last year. I was in a group for a long time and we were kind of not going where I wanted to go. And so I like maybe like a year and a half ago decided to like kind of shut down all my creative projects and start the Stevie Ray initiative. And it was like, it took like 6 months to just kind of brainstorm what I wanted, like how I could build it in a way that I thought would be sustainable for who I was at this point in my life. And the first record that I put out did really well and like put me in a position I'd never been in before. And so I have an idea of what it takes to get, to build a campaign that can kind of, earn you some money and put you in a position to earn new fans and start to travel and play shows. And so that's really like, those are my goals. And that's where I think a lot of the pressure comes from. But you do start to feel it, even if it's self-imposed in the beginning, as you go public facing with it and you start to get the comments and the criticisms and or your friends texting you like, holy shit, like I saw the numbers, they're going up and all that stuff. Like it starts to live on the outside, even if it starts from in here,
Right. So I know it's kind of like you said that, during this cycle, you kind of feel obligated to kind of be on 24/7. Have you ever tried like just like blocking out certain time for certain things and giving yourself like a little bit more structure? So instead of being on Twitter or on Instagram or just on social media 24/7 saying, hey, I'm going to do my social media, all of my social media, reply to all my comments, from 6 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to put the phone down. And, is that possible for you, in your opinion, to do something like that?
Yeah, it's definitely something I work towards. Like I turn my phone off a lot. I try to like just set boundaries. It's like, yo, we got to take a break from doing that shit. But it's also hard, like when you put out a record, and especially when it's like when you start to see in the first couple of days when like the streams like double, triple, and you're like, oh shit, we're going up. Like it feels good to look at that shit. You want to do that. So that's like a lot of where a lot of the discipline comes in. It's just like, it's not like that I have to for business purposes as much as it's like you just have to be like disciplined enough to say like, hey, I'm going to do push-ups or read a book or to go for a walk instead of like checking my Spotify for artists every 10 minutes for the next 2 hours.
When you first transition into, and I don't mean transition in any sort of real world practical way, but just mentally, when you transition mentally into wanting to actually try this as a profession,
mm-hmm.
Did you go through this process where you noticed that a lot of the people that you previously thought were dedicated to this actually weren't at all, and you kind of had to separate from them and go through all of that? Because you said you were in a group earlier, and you're not anymore. So I don't know if you were alluding to what I just described.
Yeah, I mean, it's always complicated because, like, for the most part, all of the people that I've met, especially the artists that I've met, are like really dear friends. You know what I mean? Like people that I love and care about, and who I like root for genuinely. So like, I hate to like, I don't like have any sort of like condescension or whatever, but yeah, there's times when you realize that you're willing to do stuff that other people maybe aren't, and that's gonna like that your paths are gonna have different trajectories at some point, and there's all these like uncomfortable, you know what I mean? Like it's awkward when you have friends that you guys have been in like a relatively like similar space for the whole time of your lives, and then you guys like maybe like both put out a record in the same week, and like one of you guys is doing great and the other isn't. It's like not so fun to call and catch up and be like, yo, I just hit 100,000 streams, and they're like, oh shit, I got 7. Like that shit doesn't always feel good. But yeah, I think like, I don't know, like I'm constantly juggling like being able to have me and my business exist entirely within myself so that I can still be like, not feel like I don't want to feel like I have to be like, I can't really hang out with these people anymore because they're not serious or whatever. Like I still want to like love my people and care about them. But yeah, you do have to have some boundaries when it comes to see. Because yeah, man, of course, if we're trying to be fucking rappers, we're trying to be famous and shit. Like everybody wants this, and not everybody wants it in a way where they're willing to spend 60 hours of their week doing shit they don't like to do,
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I went through the same things. I'm curious to know, because I think a lot of people don't even consider that. A lot of people, there's this emphasis on day ones, and I never changed. I never switched up on the people that were around me. And it's like, I don't know, man. Sometimes you just
the formula to stay exactly where you were,
Yeah. And for me, it was just I had married my fate and the fate of my career to these other people's work ethics. And unfortunately, they just, I remember having a conversation, and this was my best friend. I had been through so much with this guy. I remember I just started making task lists because at this point in my life, I had a #1 record separate from the group. And I'm like, we can actually do this. I'm so motivated right now. And on top of it, I'm in more than you're in. And I want to transfer all my resources over to the group because we invested so much in this. Here's my task list. And one of the tasks had to do with like MySpace outreach because it was back, around 2009, 2010 when people still used MySpace. And I remember after a week I checked in with him. I'm like, you didn't do any of this stuff. It would have taken you 5 minutes, man. And he just said, you know what? I just can't bring myself to doing it. And I'm like, what? You got a day job you complain to me all day about, but you still show up to that day job that you hate, but you can't sit in front of a laptop for 10 minutes and instead of looking at, random girls you're trying to have sex with for an hour, just check in on some fans on MySpace. So it's crazy, and it hurts to go through that process because you hurt yourself and you hurt the people around you. I don't have a good solution for navigating that social dynamic.
It's hard, especially like you said, when you married your fate. Like when you the idea of making it is us making it together. Like then it's hard for the relationship to feel or operate the same way once you break that business bond, even if the love and affection is still there. It's a complicated place. And to your original point about like how you were saying how people think they're dedicated, but maybe they don't realize that they aren't, or kind of that whole idea. Like I talk with my buddy Andre, who does all my production and like mixing, and I mean he does way more than produce. Like he helps me write all the records. Like he's and he we always talk about it's like a mirage. Like the more you start to learn about all the shit that you have to do, the more you realize, like, the closer you get, the further you get, because the more you learn, the more you realize you have to learn. And it's like, so it's easy for people to think that they're really dedicated, when, like, the more dedicated you are, the more, like, every day I'm realizing, like, holy shit, I have so much more work to do. You know what I mean? And it can be discouraging, but it's also like, that's the way. And I'd rather be on the path than sitting still. It's just my mentality.
That's a super gem right there. When I was reading the article, I think it may be unintentionally, maybe intentionally, like, you painted a very, like, bleak and kind of dark picture of pursuing music, right? But I'm also old enough to remember how artists have to grind it out, 15, 20 years ago. Would you prefer, and I'm sure you're familiar with that as well, like, would you prefer being an artist in today's time or being an artist, 20 years ago, where you had to get out, slang mixtapes out of the back of your trunk, wait outside of a record company to try to flag down an A&R, battle on street corners? Totally, it totally different game. Which era would you have rather come up in?
Well, it's hard to say, because, like, I did a good, like, I had a box of CDs in my trunk. I used to jump in every cypher that I ever saw, because I was like, maybe someone will see me right now. Like, I used to go, like, I probably hawked you a CD at a Team Backpack conference back in the day, for being honest. You know what I mean? Like, so I've been through the whole, like, kind of seen both sides of it. I guess I would probably choose today's climate. It's hard to say. Obviously, I'm having more success now than I was then, so it's easy for me to say that. But I think back, like, nowadays, like, I don't, obviously, like, there's certain parts of this that I want to outsource, like the social media stuff. But I get a lot of joy out of knowing that I can, like, operate my own business, and that I get to make every creative decision myself. And like, I'm not really looking for, like, the moment when somebody, like, scoops me up and takes away all the responsibilities. I'm pretty happy having, like, I just like the freedom of being able to structure my life however I want to. So as much, like, there's pros and cons, and, like, there's a lot of responsibilities with this side of it, but it's like, I just get, I don't know. There's a lot of freedom in the way that I have my arrangement set up right now, That's what I was hoping.
Everybody's allowed their own opinion, and some might choose one over the other, but that's what I was hoping you would say. Today we just have so much freedom. There's definitely, and I think the fact that there's more independent artists making a living doing what they love today than there was 20 years ago, speak to the fact that there is more opportunity. Of course, there's going to be a shitload of things that you don't want to do. But being someone that has had, several jobs in other industries, like, to me, reading your article, it was like, I get it. I've dealt with artists for a decade now, but at the same time, I also know that no matter what you love to do, if you want to do it at its highest level, there's going to be a shitload of things that you don't want to do.
Of course. Yeah. And that's how you get to that. Like, if that's why it's the highest level, because that's how you separate the boys from the men, right? If it was easy, fucking do it.
So to me, it's like, you have to know that this comes with it. And like you just said, I think was a super gem. Like, the more you get into this, the more you realize there's so much other stuff that you need to do, right? But it's like, if you have to do these things to be successful, that's the path you chose. Like, because, I wanted to be in the NBA until reality hit me in high school. Like, Dame, you're only 5'10". You're not really that fast. You're good, but you're not really that fast. A lot of reality hit me in high school. But it's like, there's just certain things that I would have had to do or just couldn't do, and that just wouldn't allow me to play in the NBA. And that's why I tell artists, it's like, if you can't do certain things, no matter what, even if it's mental illness, right? Like, if you can't get past certain barriers to do certain things, at least at a certain level, then it's just not possible to be that. And that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah. And that's a conversation I have with my friends often about, like, I feel like when we were young, it was so much like everyone was trying to have that like Kobe mentality of like, I'll never quit. I'll always outwork everybody. And like now that we're grown, I'm like, yo, like, are you happy? Like, do you want to do this every day? Like, if you're fucking like depressed or you're drinking every day because you can't deal with the stress, like, man, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to be a rapper. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so, even like that's a question I try to have that conversation with myself about like, can you do this every day? And is this worth it? Pretty regularly. Like even before I put out this record, I called one of my friends who's an MC and I was like, yo, I'm really stressed. I know I'm about to go into this like process of campaigning that I hate. And like, I got to ask myself, like, is this what I want to do with my life? Is this worth it? And like, for me, I always get to the point where the answer is yes, and like from an organic place of like even now that I'm in the campaign process, it's once you get over there's parts of every job that suck. And so I'm just having to do one of the harder parts of my job right now. But like, once you get your head wrapped around it, at least for me, it's manageable. You know what I mean? But I don't know. It is a complicated thing. And like you said, there's certain shit that if you can't do it, like, because that's such a big part of being an artist is like who you are. You know what I mean? Because you got to just be wavy. People got to just like you. You know what I mean? Like there's like Lil Uzi Vert, like just the way he is, the way he dresses and talks and acts and moves, like people just like him. And he just like, some people have that like it factor, right? Everyone's always looking for that. And it's like, I think like you have to be self-assured. You have to like believe in yourself and love yourself and like not be reactionary to what people do or think or say about you. And so I think if you have that, then the whole thing can be really joyous. But if you got a void inside of you and you're looking for people outside of you to fill that, then this is like a really dangerous place to be as a human,
Right, for sure.
Let me just ask, because we're already at the half an hour mark, so I don't want to take up more of your time, and this isn't a quick question to answer. Hopefully we can make it quick. What are your main income streams as a DIY artist?
Merchandise and streaming. So I sell like hoodies. Like these are my hoodies. They say Free, which is the name of my debut album. Through Printify on my website. And then so they're like ship to order, so I don't have to like buy 100 hoodies and then sell 70 before I make profit. They just like when you order it, someone produces it and ships it, and so I get profit that way. And then streaming, and then touring when I'm like, obviously now I'm not touring. Like this is a tough time because I had to cancel like 5 or 6 shows that was gonna, and also like I'm not like super comfortable. You know what I mean? Like I put stuff back at the grocery store if I have to. You know what I mean? Like I make it work. But yeah, honestly, like touring is a great way to make money as long as you can do it in a way. Like I usually try to find support slots because I know I can bring a couple, like a good amount of people, and I can sell, 5 or 10 pieces of merch off the table every night. But if I were going out there by myself, I'd probably be breaking even or losing money, But if I can link up with one of my homies, it's another thing too. Like part of the DIY, like I have done a lot of tour managing and I've booked a lot of tours. So I'll hit up one of my homies who has draw and who can make money on the road. And I'll say like, yo, I'll book you a 15 show tour if you give me direct support and pay me whatever, 30% of the money that I bring in. And that's helped me a lot because I can just come to people, especially now that I have the contacts, I can pretty much put a skeleton of a tour together. I can come to someone at the point where I'm like, do you want all this money or not? That's helped me to like earn, honestly, like probably before I was ready to, as far as like my own fan base, was just the ability to organize tours and promote them and like get my friends paid. And then as a result, they would just ship me in.
So, I mean, I think I knew, just with how quick you hit me back on Twitter, I knew that and just your communication, not a lot of artists have that. I know that's a low bar, but like not a lot of artists have like that professionalism. And I think, and I'm just hearing you talk about your touring and organizing tours, I think that is going to go a long way. It has probably already gone a long way for you. And like I said, I know it's a low bar, but artists need to learn to be more responsive, answer their emails, check their DMs.
Mhm.
I know a lot of the DMs is probably going to be, stuff that you don't need to respond to. But especially even in the early days, even if it's just fans, you should be responding to all your DMs. So I appreciate you being so responsive and getting back to us, because I literally just hit him up like yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yesterday?
Yeah, in the morning, like
yesterday.
right after the article went live. Yeah.
Yeah, it was yesterday. Well, dope. I mean, we can definitely wrap this up. Our podcast is usually not that long, but I think it was dope speaking with you. Again, I think we'll post the article. I already posted it in our Facebook group. We'll post it again when this goes live. It does paint a dark picture, but I love music today because, like, 20 years ago when you had to like sign to a major record label, you had to be all in. Like they were trying to hit a home run with you like every single time, right? Whereas today, even if you do have some issues, you can be like you don't have to be on a major label. You can, if you have the draw, if you can just draw 1,000 fans or 10,000 fans, like you can make a living, and you can have like a middle income artist where that just wasn't possible today. So I'm such a fan of music today. I like the article, but I still feel like, look, this is the reality. You painted the reality, and I love that you did that. So artists know what they're getting into. This is what it takes to be an independent artist or a DIY artist.
That's probably why people don't use that term, because it's hard to say. And
because I can't say it.
One day, Dame is going to admit the reality that artists are sensitive and emotional, and sometimes our journeys sometimes reach pretty low points, and we express that sometimes.
Yeah,
and I think I do want to say, like, I'm super, super grateful for my life. You know what I mean? Like, the culture and community of hip hop, and like my life as an artist, like making songs and trying to play shows has been the thing that's drove my life, and I've had a beautiful life that I love. So I don't like. There's parts of it that are challenging, and I think I try to like shine a light on those, because I think a lot of people have no idea that that's stuff that we go through. But I don't want to paint a dark, like, I'm a happy guy who lives a beautiful life, and I don't want to come off as ungrateful or miserable or anything like that.
It definitely wasn't ungrateful, but I'm a big fan of structure. I understand the importance of structure, and I try to, and I know that art can't be put in a box, and I can't tell you just to create from 7 to 9 or 9 to 5 or whatever. Like, creativity comes at different times. But to the extent that you can, you need structure in your life. Like, artists that are successful have a schedule. They get things done. They have a team that helps them with this as well. But it's like you have to put some structure in your life to do the things that are required of you to be successful, right?
Yeah.
And if you've never had that structure, you probably don't know how to give it to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's so important.
I think too, like, it's important. Sorry, we keep going on and on, but
it's all good.
To be self-aware, because like I know some artists who are like brilliant artists that are super fucking wavy. They have genius ideas, beautiful voices, that just like can't send email, or just like, you know what I mean? That like are not good at that stuff. And I'm like, that stuff just comes natural to me. So I was always like, okay, I can always save money by doing these things by myself because they're not that hard to me. So I don't want to pay anyone to do them. But if that's not you, like I've seen a lot of artists like really like damage their self-confidence or like their flow of their career by being like kind of like told by Twitter, like, oh, you have to be this certain kind of like marketing guru, like super professional person. And it's like, yo, if you're like an artsy weirdo, like you just got to find a manager. You know what I mean? Like you got to get help in that way, even if it's like just your homie who like was good at English in high school or whatever. But like, I think it's important to play to your strengths. And like, I'm lucky that those kinds of things, like just like responding to emails and sounding professional and that stuff, is just kind of makes sense to me naturally. But I think as an artist, you got to be who you are. You know what I mean? That's what makes you a dope artist, and that's what makes people want to consume you as in the form of your art. So I don't know. Like, it is important to be professional and to be structured and to take care of your business, but it's also important to be who you are and figure out how you can build that in a way that's sustainable, you know?
Right.
Well, once again, Stevie Ray, thank you. Shout out your social media.
Yeah, at Call Me Stevie Ray anywhere, any social media, Call Me Stevie Ray or .com/Call Me Stevie Ray. And then the new record, Nothing But Love, featuring Jay Lately and Christina Ergol, is out now. And if you like that and you want to go back to my album, my debut album, Free, is well, you'll find it in any of the same streaming services where you find the song.
Well, once again, we appreciate it. My name is DJ Payne 1. He's Dame Ritter. We're joined by Stevie Ray. MusicEntrepreneurClub.com is the music business mentorship program that we run. CollabForTheCrown.com is the contest we're running. Win $1,000 and a feature with King Crooked. Till next time, appreciate you for listening. Peace.